My name is Harlan Voss. I'm 71 years old. For 38 years, I've kept Station 12 running. Most people in town think I'm just the equipment guy. I fix the hoses. I patch the bay doors. I grease the ladder truck's hinges every spring. That's what they see. That's all they see. They don't see the deed in my safe. They don't see the trust that owns every brick of that firehouse. They don't know I founded Station 12 the year my wife died. I built it so no other family would burn a house down waiting for help that came too late. My son Bryce doesn't know either. Bryce is the fire chief now. He wears the white helmet. He gives the press conferences. He shakes the mayor's hand at ribbon cuttings. 3 weeks ago, my phone rang at 11 at night. I almost didn't answer. Nothing good calls that late. It was Dot Ramirez. She's run dispatch at Station 12 for 22 years. Her voice was shaking. "Harlan," she said, "you need to see the agenda for Thursday's board meeting." I asked her what she meant. "Bryce filed paperwork," she said. "He's trying to sell the station, the land, all of it, to Season Point Resorts." I sat down on my porch step. The night was cold. My knees ached the way they always do before rain. "Sell it for what?" I asked. $55 million, she said. "They want to put a golf resort where the bay doors are." "Harlan, he doesn't know you're the one who has to sign off. He thinks the district board owns it outright." I didn't say anything for a long moment. A dog barked 2 houses down. The porch light hummed above me. "Does the board know either?" I asked. "No," Dot said. "Nobody does. Just you. And now me." I thanked her. I told her not to tell Bryce I was coming. I hadn't set foot in a board meeting in 6 years. I stayed in the background on purpose. I liked being invisible. It let me watch the department run without anyone asking me hard questions. And I think, if I'm honest, Bryce liked me being invisible too. It let him tell his own story about how he built this department from nothing. But nobody builds a fire district from nothing. Somebody always pays first. I paid first. I built Station 12 brick by brick after Marion died in a house fire 2 towns over. Back then, the nearest engine was 40 minutes out. 40 minutes for a fire that took her in 11. I used every dollar of her life insurance. I used every dollar I had saved. I signed the founding trust in 1988, alone, in a lawyer's office that smelled like old carpet and coffee. I never told anyone outside that office what I'd done. Bryce was 6 years old that year. He grew up believing his father was a janitor who happened to love firehouses. He never asked why the district always had money for new gear when other stations in the county were falling apart. He never asked who really owned the ground under his boots. Kids don't ask those questions. And I never gave him a reason to start. I decided it was time he found out. I drove to the station the next morning before the sun came up, the way I have every morning for 38 years. I let myself in through the side door. The bay smelled like diesel and rubber, the same smell it's had since 1988. Some smells never leave a building. They just settle into the walls. A young firefighter named Priya was already up, checking the ladder truck's oxygen tanks. She's 24. She joined us 2 years ago, straight out of the academy, sharp as a tack. She waved at me the way everybody waves at me. Friendly, a little distracted. The guy who fixes things. "Morning, Harlan," she said. "You hear about the Gala Thursday? Chief says it's a big deal. Investors and everything." "I heard," I said. I didn't tell her what I knew. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet, not even to myself. I found Faust in the break room. Retired battalion chief, 78 years old, still shows up most mornings for the coffee and the company. He's known me since before Marion died. He's one of maybe 3 people alive who know the whole story. "You look like a man carrying something heavy," Faust said. I told him about Dot's call, about the resort deal, about the $55 million and the golf course where the bay doors used to be. Faust didn't say much. He never does. He just nodded slowly and refilled his coffee. "You going to tell him tonight, "Or Thursday?" he asked. "Thursday," I said, in front of everybody. He needs to hear it the way I heard it, all at once. Faust looked at me for a long moment. "That's a hard way to teach a lesson, Harlan, I know," I said. "I've been gentle with him his whole life. Gentle hasn't worked." I spent that Wednesday walking the station one more time, room by room, the way you walk a house before you sell it, except I wasn't selling anything. I was reminding myself why I built it. I stood in the spot where the first engine used to park, back when it was the only engine we had. I touched the wall where Marion's photo used to hang before I moved it home, worried it would fade in the sunlight. 38 years is a long time to carry a secret. I'd carried it so long it had started to feel like just another part of the building. Load-bearing. Invisible, necessary, the gala was Thursday night. Season Point Resorts had rented the community hall and dressed it up like a ballroom. String lights hung from the rafters. A jazz trio played in the corner. A projector screen looped rendering after rendering of a resort where our engine bay used to be. Rolling green fairways where the training yard used to be. A spa where the equipment shed used to be. A valet stand where the ambulance bay used to be. I put on my one good jacket. I walked in through the side door in my work boots, because that's who I've always been at these things, the guy who fixes hoses, standing near the coat check, saying nothing. Bryce was up front near the podium. He looked good in that navy suit. He looked like a man who'd already spent the money in his head. He spotted me near the punch table. He didn't even lower his voice. "Dad," he said to a man beside him, loud enough for half the room to hear, "this is my father. He's just the equipment guy at the old station. Doesn't really weigh in on the business side." The man laughed politely. He turned back to Bryce without so much as a nod at me. I felt that one land. 38 years of keeping this district alive, and I was just the equipment guy who didn't weigh in on the business side. I didn't say a word. I found a folding chair near the back. I sat down. I waited. I've waited longer for less. Priya spotted me from across the room. She came over with a plate of appetizers she clearly didn't want, just an excuse to talk. "Chief seems nervous tonight," she said, nodding toward the stage. "You okay, Harlan? You've got a face on you." "I'm fine," I said, "just watching." "You always are," she said, and went back to her seat. She meant it kindly. She had no idea how true it was. I looked around the hall. I recognized half the faces. Town council members, a few retired firefighters, including Faust, sitting near the back with his arms crossed, watching me instead of the stage. The mayor sat up front, nodding along to every slide like it was gospel. Nobody in that room, except Faust and Dot, knew what was folded up in my jacket pocket. The developer's rep got up first. Slick suit. Slicker slides. He talked about unlocking value. He talked about community upside. He said a golf course would put our little town on the map. He said the $55 million would fund a new consolidated station 2 counties over, shared with 3 other districts. Response times be damned. Nobody in that room asked what response times be damned would actually mean on a Tuesday night when someone's kitchen catches fire on Elm Street. Then Bryce got up. He talked about legacy. He talked about honoring the department's roots while embracing smart growth. Somebody handed him those words. He didn't write them himself. I could tell. Then he said the line that changed the whole night. "The board vote tonight is really a formality," he said, smiling into the microphone, "since the land is district-owned, free and clear." That was the moment. I stood up from my folding chair. My knees cracked loud enough that a woman 2 rows up turned around. A few more heads followed hers. "Bryce," I said, "can I ask a question?" He smiled the way you smile at your dad when he's about to embarrass you in public. Patient, a little pitying. "Sure, Dad. Go ahead." "Who exactly owns this land?" I said. "Free and clear," you said. "The district," he said, "has since before I was chief." I nodded slowly. I reached into my jacket. I pulled out a folded copy of the deed. 38 years old. The paper had gone soft at the creases from being handled once a year, every year, just to check it was still there. This land, I said, is owned by the Marion Voss Firefighter Trust. Established 1988. I'm the sole trustee. The room went quiet the way a room goes quiet right before thunder. That's not possible, Bryce said. His smile hadn't caught up with his eyes yet. It's very possible, I said. I founded this district the year your mother died. I paid for the land. I paid for the first engine. Every grant, every upgrade, every radio system for the last 38 years went through a trust with my name on it, not the district's. Ramirez, 3 rows back, put her hand over her mouth. You can't sell what you don't own, son, I said, as gently as I could manage in front of 200 people. And I don't own a golf course. I own a firehouse. The developer's rep started talking fast. Something about pre-existing agreements. Something about easements. I let him talk. Paperwork doesn't care how good your slides look, and his slides had never once mentioned my trust, because his team never checked. Bryce found his voice again. Dad, this deal is real money. This fund's a merged, modern station. This is the future. The future, I said, is a 5-minute response time for the Elm Street houses, not a 40-minute drive from 2 counties over, because you shipped the engine out to save on land tax. Somebody in the crowd started clapping. Slow, at first. I found out later it was a retired battalion chief named Faust. Others joined him. The applause built until it filled the whole hall. Bryce's face went through about 4 colors. Embarrassment first. Then anger. Then something that might have been shame. Why didn't you ever tell me? He said, quieter now, just to me. The microphone up front was still hot. Half the room heard him anyway. Because you never asked, I said. You asked about budgets. You asked about headcounts. You asked about grant cycles. You never once asked who actually owned the ground you were standing on. I let you build your career thinking it came from nowhere. That's on me too. I want to be honest with you here. I wasn't only trying to save the station. Part of me wanted to see if my son had earned trust he'd never once tried to earn. Part of me wanted him to feel, just for one night, as small as he'd made me feel at that punch table. I'm not proud of that part, but I'm being honest with you. One of the board members, a woman named Councilwoman Ashford, stood up before the vote. She'd been on the board 11 years. She looked straight at Bryce. Chief Voss, she said, did you draft this sale agreement without confirming land ownership first? Bryce's jaw tightened. I was told the district held clear title. Told by whom? He didn't answer right away. The silence stretched long enough to be its own kind of answer. By nobody, he finally said. I assumed it. We've operated out of this building my whole career. I never had a reason to question it. Ashford turned to the developer's rep. And your firm's due diligence didn't catch a 38-year-old trust filing? That seems like an expensive oversight for a $55 million transaction. The rep loosened his tie. He mumbled something about title searches and clerical gaps in the county records. Nobody in the room believed him. I didn't either. I think they simply didn't look, because nobody expects the equipment guy to be the reason a deal like that falls apart. Another board member, an older man named Petroselli, who'd known me for 20 years without ever really knowing me, leaned toward Bryce. Son, I think we need to pull this from tonight's agenda entirely. The board tabled the sale that night. My paperwork mattered, but it wasn't the whole reason. Ramirez stood up next. She read 11 years of response time data. She showed exactly what a consolidated station would cost the Elm Street and River Road neighborhoods. Not in dollars. In minutes. In lives. The room didn't need me to be a hero. It needed the truth on the table. Once the truth was there, the vote canceled itself. Season Point Resorts pulled their offer within a week. Word travels fast when a $55 million deal falls apart over a deed nobody bothered to check. The local paper ran a story 2 days later. Founders Trust Block's resort sale of historic Firehouse. They didn't get my name right in the first printing, called me Harold instead of Harlan, but they got the facts straight, and that mattered more to me than the spelling. Priya texted me a photo of the article with 3 exclamation points. Foss just called and said, "Told you paperwork beats slides every time," and hung up before I could answer. The mayor called too, a week later, mostly to make sure I wasn't planning to sue the town over the whole mess. I told him I wasn't. I told him all I ever wanted was for the station to still be standing in another 38 years. He seemed relieved. Politicians usually are, when the story ends without a lawsuit attached. Strangers started stopping me at the grocery store. An older woman I barely knew grabbed my hand near the produce section and said, "Thank you for what you did for this town." I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't, most days. I didn't do it for the town. I did it for Marion and for a promise I made when I was 26 years old and furious at the world. The town just happened to benefit from a grief I never learned how to put down. A local radio station asked me for an interview. I turned it down. Some things aren't meant to be performed for an audience. This story, the one I'm telling you now, is the only version I've told from start to finish, and I'm only telling it because I think somebody out there needs to hear it more than I need my privacy. Bryce didn't call me for 4 days. Those 4 days were harder than I expected. I'd imagined relief. Instead, I got silence, and silence from your only child feels heavier than any argument ever could. I kept my phone close, out of habit, checking it more than I'd admit to anyone but you. Faust called on the 2nd day. "You did the right thing," he said. "Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to wait." "I know," I said. "You want me to talk to him?" "No," I said. "This one's mine to fix. Or not fix. Whichever way it goes." On the 3rd day, Dot stopped by with a casserole, the kind of gesture small towns are built on. She didn't say much either, just squeezed my shoulder on her way out and told me Bryce had been quiet at the station too, running drills without his usual energy, staying late in the office with the door shut. I thought about calling him a dozen times. Every time I stopped myself. I'd spent 38 years choosing silence for the wrong reasons. I didn't want to choose it again out of impatience now, when what he needed most was time to work through what he'd learned. On the 5th day, he showed up at my house. Not in the suit. In his old station coveralls, the ones he wore as a probie under my old friend Captain Reyes 20 years ago. He sat on my porch step. The same step where I'd taken Dot's call 3 weeks before. "I need you to explain it to me," he said. "All of it. Not the version from the meeting. The real one." So I told him. I told him about Marion. I met her when I was 19, working the counter at a hardware store 2 towns over. She used to come in every Saturday for gardening supplies she didn't really need, just to talk to me. It took me 4 months to work up the courage to ask her out. It took her about 4 seconds to say yes. She told me later she'd been waiting on me the whole time. We married young. We didn't have much. A small house, a used truck, and each other. Bryce came along when I was 25, and for 1 year we were as happy as I've ever been in my life. Then the fire happened. A space heater, an old wiring fault. A house 2 streets over from ours that caught in the middle of the night. Marion went to help the neighbors get their kids out. She always ran toward trouble instead of away from it. That was who she was. The nearest engine was 40 minutes out. I told him about the 40-minute wait for an engine that never made it in time. I told him about signing the trust papers alone, 26 years old, my hands shaking, furious at a system that let his mother die because the nearest station was too far and too underfunded to matter. I told him I never talked about it, because talking about it meant admitting how angry I still was. Anger like that doesn't heal on its own. It just goes quiet. Mine went quiet for 38 years. He cried on that porch step. I hadn't seen my son cry since he was 9 years old, the day we buried his mother. I called you the equipment guy, he said. In front of everyone. You did, I said. I'm sorry. I know. We sat there a long time. The porch light hummed above us, same as it always does. Eventually, he asked me the question I'd been waiting 38 years for somebody to ask. Why did you never make me a trustee? Because I wasn't sure you wanted the Firehouse, I said. I thought you wanted the title, the white helmet, the press conferences. I didn't know if you wanted the actual weight of it. I want the weight of it, he said. I want to know what it's for. We sat quiet for a while after that. The streetlight down the block flickered on, early, the way it does on cloudy evenings. Bryce looked older to me in that light. Not old like me, old like a man who'd just realized how much he didn't know about his own life. Can I ask you something else? He said. Go ahead. Did you ever think about telling me before this, just sitting me down, no gala, no board meeting, and saying, son, here's what I built and why? I thought about that question honestly before I answered. 100 times, I said. I'd get close. I'd almost say it at Thanksgiving, or after your academy graduation, or the day you made captain. Something always stopped me. What stopped you? Fear, mostly, I said. If I told you the station was mine, I was afraid you'd stop seeing it as something you'd earned your own way. I wanted you to be proud of your career, not my money. I got that wrong. I see that now. Secrets don't protect anybody. They just wait for the worst possible moment to come out on their own. Bryce nodded slowly. He looked down at his hands, the same hands I taught to tie a bowline knot when he was 7 years old. I'm not going to pretend Thursday didn't hurt, he said. Finding out like that, in front of the whole town. That's going to sit with me a while. It should, I said. I'm not sorry I did it the way I did it. I am sorry it had to be done that way at all. 3 months later, I amended the trust. Bryce is co-trustee now. He doesn't get final say over the land that stays mine until I'm gone, but he sits in the room when the real decisions get made now. He's seen the deed. He's seen Marion's name on the founding papers. He understands, finally, that Station 12 was never a line item on somebody's budget. It was a promise I made to a woman who never got to see me keep it. The golf resort deal is dead. Season Point Resorts found another town to bulldoze somewhere else, I imagine. Developers always do. Our station still stands where it's always stood. 5 minutes from Elm Street. 5 minutes from River Road. Close enough to matter, the way it was built to be. Dot Ramirez still runs dispatch. She still calls me Harlan, not the equipment guy, which I appreciate more than she probably knows. Every spring, I still grease the ladder truck's hinges myself. Bryce asked to help me do it this year. We didn't talk much while we worked. Some things don't need words. We just worked, side by side, the way fathers and sons are supposed to. Priya made captain last month. Bryce pinned the badge on her himself, in the same bay where I'd stood invisible at the punch table all those years, watching my son almost sell away everything I'd built. This time, I wasn't invisible. Bryce called me up to stand beside him for the photo. He introduced me different this time. This is my father, he said to the room. He founded this department. Everything we have because of him. Priya caught my eye across the bay and smiled. She never did learn I was more than the equipment guy until that day. Now she asks me questions about the old days, about Marion, about why the training yard is laid out the way it is. I don't mind telling her. Some stories are worth repeating as long as the right people are finally asking. Some men build monuments with their names carved into stone. I built a firehouse, and I let my own son believe it belonged to no one in particular for 38 years. I was too proud to say otherwise. I was too hurt to explain why. If there's one thing I'd tell you, watching from wherever you're watching this, it's simple. The people who look the smallest in the room are sometimes the ones holding the paper that matters most. Don't assume the man in the work boots by the coat check has nothing to say. He might own the whole building. He might have built it with his own 2 hands out of grief, so that nobody else would have to bury someone the way he buried his wife. If you believe respect is earned in silence and paid back in full when it's least expected, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to The Forgotten Father if you want more stories like mine. Real stories about fathers and grandfathers who let their actions speak long after the world stopped listening. And tell me in the comments, would you have stood up in that gala the way I did? Or would you have let the silence hold a little longer? I'll read every answer. This is Harlan Voss, and this is my true story.